Hey guys and girls and non-binary persons, welcome to my latest book review, which is on the Collected Work of Machiavelli. This is one of the great courses, and it's offered through Audible, and it's by William R. Cook. So I started listening to this course because my beloved Dan Le Batard's show was off for 3 weeks after signing a massive new contract. Dan does not love the audience. We know this. But I needed something to listen to, and I had this Machiavelli course from a few years ago, so I decided to listen to it. And as I was listening to it, I kept being struck by how this really sounded like the Donald Trump playbook, like down to the fact that "Make Florence Great Again" was one of Machiavelli's political slogans. So as I was listening to this, I just started jotting down kind of things that were like super, almost not even correlation, like causation, like things that were like almost directly traceable from Machiavelli to Trump. And whatever your political affiliation is, I think if you follow me, you kind of have an idea of where I am. I thought this was really interesting because it makes me think that someone in Trump's team, or even Trump himself, listened to this course. Because there's just too many things that seem directly related from the beginning of his campaign through now. And so I wanted to go through these 10 ideas and just kind of share the spookiness and some appreciation for what Machiavelli was about outside of the prince. Here are the 10 ideas. Number 1, make Florence great again. So the idea of making Florence great again, the idea of returning to the past, was something that Machiavelli really talked about in The Prince and in his history of Liddy. And the reason was nostalgia. Even back then, Machiavelli was one of the first to realize that people always think things were better in the past. And if you can promise them that things will be better like they believe things were in the past, whether or not that was true, they're going to go along with it. Hence, make America great again. Number 2, law and order. This was a big thing for Machiavelli. Machiavelli was all about law and order because he believed, and back in the time of his writing, it was probably true because things were a bit more feudal and more dangerous. You know, if you went outside the city, the roads weren't safe, you might be robbed and murdered and all that stuff. So he was really big on the platform of law and order because if the citizens feel as though they are safe, then they will attribute that feeling of safety and strongman personality to the prince or the ruler. Trump is big on law and order. He talks about it all the time, as do most Republicans. And law and order often means cracking down on black and brown people in America. Sorry, that was kind of political. Number 3, soldiers who love their country over mercenaries and over others. This is a point Machiavelli makes over and over again. Machiavelli was not into mercenaries, and he wasn't even really into allies, because he believed that a soldier who loves his country is going to fight harder for you and going to take more orders and go farther, right? In the course, William R. Cook, who sounds like the iocane powder guy in The Princess Bride, says that basically, if you were to think about this in terms of World War I, the soldier who loves his country is going over that trench, whereas maybe the mercenary isn't or the ally isn't, because he's fighting for something larger than himself. And Trump consistently talks about the troops and how much he loves them and how the troops love America. All this Colin Kaepernick thing, disrespecting the troops. Anytime he can get on this respect the troops and troops love America more than anyone talking point, he does. Number 4, better to be loved than feared, right? This is the most famous Machiavelliism. And clearly Trump has talked about that, the bullying and name-calling in the primaries, which worked, by the way, right? Like, people were all up in arms in it, but it worked. I mean, he brought Ted Cruz to his knees. Ted Cruz is begging him for support now after he accused him of having an ugly wife and said his dad might have killed JFK, because it's better to be feared than loved. Number 5, don't keep nobles around. This is super fascinating. So Machiavelli said for a prince to really rule effectively, you got to get rid of the nobles because the nobles believe that they are equal to you. And you don't want that. You want people being a little subservient. So if you look at Trump, he gets rid of the people who start to think that they're in control. Steve Bannon, various other guys, the Koch brothers he's been in and out with. Because anyone who starts to believe that they're as powerful or as big as Trump, he gets rid of. And that's exactly what Machiavelli recommended, because when those people start to feel like they're equal to you, they start to think they can get rid of you. Number 6, country over everything. It's no secret to talk about nationalism, and specifically white nationalism, as Trump's base. You know, he won every base of white people, and he clearly is talking to a specific sector of white people with a lot of his rhetoric. And this global rise of nationalism, both in England with Brexit and Sweden with some of the anti-Muslim stuff, is a global force where this country over everything is kind of a big thing that's reviving everywhere, and Trump definitely tapped into that. Number 7, the idea of republics versus democracies versus oligarchies. So Machiavelli was big on the idea of republics, and a republic is not quite a democracy. A democracy might be the public face of a republic, but really a republic has one person in charge. It's kind of a dictatorship. And he says versus an oligarchy where you have kind of the noble rule, or versus a straight up democracy. And Machiavelli is all about the republic. I don't want to get into it because I'm not going to do it justice, and there was a lot of this in the history of Liddy. But Machiavelli basically has proven that in his time, a republic was the best form of government. It was best to have one person at the front and let that person take care of business. And a lot of it probably had to do with the families that were around at the time, and his respect for Caesar Borgia. So that is kind of not necessarily translatable to modern time, but if you look at the way Trump is governing, it very much falls in line with what Machiavelli would call a republic. Number 8, slight concessions to those wronged, right? Like, this is the thing I think people are missing out sometimes with Trump. Like I mentioned in the preview video for this, he's not having Kim Kardashian out there to pardon people or pardoning Jack Johnson posthumously in order to do nothing, right? He's not just doing it because he's a nice guy or because he thinks that, you know, it's the right thing to do. He's doing that because these slight concessions gain him talking points. And Machiavelli talks about Caesar Borgia and Romano. And Romano was kind of Caesar Borgia's like hitman, right? He was the guy who did the dirty work. And he was so brutal and so kind of strict that the people really hated him in addition to fearing him. So eventually, what does Caesar Borgia do? He chops Romano in half and leaves him in the square to show the people that this type of brutality will not be tolerated, and that Caesar Borgia is actually the nice guy, even though he put Romano in power in the first place. So these slight concessions do just enough to get people off your back, and Trump definitely makes those. Number 9, boldness, right? Machiavelli talks about how fortune is a woman, and if you're going to act politically, you need to be bold. Whether you like his boldness or not, Trump is definitely bold. And number 10, divide and conquer tactics, right? And you could argue that some of this is Russia, right? If you watch the movie Active Measures, which I'll do a review on at some point, there's a good amount of evidence that Russia is in the middle of doing a divide and conquer online campaign in multiple countries. But Trump definitely is a divider, whether it's the NFL, whether it's the Charlottesville good people on both sides. The more people are divided, the more Trump can kind of ride that to power, and he's definitely realized that, which is why he bangs on certain divisive things, whether it's Nike or other things that he likes to go to the well with over and over again, whether it's MS-13 or whatever. But the divide and conquer tactics are clearly Trump's modus operandi, and the person who was the first to really talk about that and invent them, so to speak, politically, was a guy named Machiavelli. So those are the 10 ideas. We can go through them again real quick. I don't want to make this video too long. Number 1, make Florence great again. Number 2, law and order. Number 3, soldiers who love their country, not mercenaries and not allies. Number 4, better to be feared than loved. Number 5, don't keep nobles around lest they think they're equal to you. Number 6, country over everything. Number 7, the idea of republics versus democracies versus oligarchies. Number 8, slight concessions to those you have wronged. Number 9, boldness. And number 10, divide and conquer. I really enjoyed this course, and I would definitely recommend it. I'd probably give it 3.5 out of 5 stars just because it's kind of long and repetitive. You know, I think these 10 ideas really capture what Machiavelli believed in a much shorter format. But definitely check it out on Audible if you have a chance and you're interested in this subject. And I will be back with more videos for you very soon. No, that was really good. I killed that.